You are standing in the middle of a featureless white plain. No trees, no rivers, no roads, nothing but ice in every direction until it meets the sky. The wind is the only sound. It looks like the emptiest, most boring place on Earth, a continent with nothing left to discover. It is not. Beneath your feet, hidden under up to 4.8 kilometers of ice, is one of the most complex, violent, and ancient landscapes on the planet, and scientists have only just started to see it. Antarctica holds about 90% of the world's ice and roughly 70% of its fresh water. For most of human history, that's all anyone really knew. Explorers walked across the surface, planted flags, and froze to death without ever suspecting what was underneath them. The ice looked solid, permanent, and empty all the way down. What was actually underneath stayed a mystery for over a century because you can't dig through several kilometers of ice with a shovel. You have to look through it instead, using sound and radio waves bounced off whatever lies beneath. In 2019, a team of glaciologists led by Mathieu Morligam at the University of California, Irvine, published the most detailed map of the Antarctic bedrock ever made. It's called Bed Machine, and it combines 4 decades of radar, satellite, and ice flow data from 19 research institutions. What it revealed wasn't a flat rock floor under a flat ice sheet. It was a hidden continent full of mountains, canyons, and structures nobody had properly measured before. The most striking discovery was a single trench, 11,500 feet below sea level, carved beneath the Denman Glacier in East Antarctica. It is officially the deepest point on any continent on Earth. Deeper than Death Valley, deeper than the Dead Sea, deeper than anywhere you can stand on dry land. For decades, scientists had flown radar surveys directly over it and missed it completely. The walls of the canyon were so steep that the radar echoes bounced off the sides instead of the bottom, hiding the true depth in plain sight. That's just one trench. Decades earlier, in a separate survey, researchers mapping the ice with seismic instruments found something even stranger, an entire mountain range buried under East Antarctica, comparable in scale to the Alps. It's called the Gomburtsev Subglacial Mountains, and nobody has ever seen it with their own eyes. It's been hidden under ice for so long that scientists are still arguing about how it formed in the first place. Then there's what's underneath the mountains. In 2017, a University of Edinburgh undergraduate named Max van Wyk de Vries was sifting through public radar data of West Antarctica when he started noticing cone-shaped formations poking up into the ice from below. The unmistakable shape of volcanoes. He brought it to his professors. Together, working with glaciologist Robert Bingham, they confirmed 91 previously unknown subglacial volcanoes on top of the 47 already known. That made the region, called the West Antarctic Rift System, possibly the largest volcanic province on Earth, rivaling East Africa's Great Rift Valley. Nobody knows for certain if any of them are active. What they do know is that even a dormant volcano generates enough heat to melt ice from below, and that heat is part of what keeps an entire hidden world liquid underneath a frozen one. Because here's the part that sounds impossible. Under kilometers of ice, at temperatures that should be locked solid, there is liquid water. Lots of it. More than 400 lakes have been found sealed beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. The pressure of all that ice above, combined with heat rising from the rock below, keeps the water from freezing, even though the surface a few kilometers up can drop below minus 80 degrees Celsius. The largest of these lakes is Vostok, roughly the size of Lake Ontario, sitting under nearly 4 kilometers of ice near the geographic South Pole. A Russian geographer named Andrei Kapitsa first suspected it existed back in the 1960s based on seismic data. It wasn't confirmed until 1996. Drilling toward it began in 1989 and continued on and off 23 years, partly because nobody wanted to contaminate whatever was down there. On February 5th, 2012, a Russian team finally broke through 3,769 meters down. Water shot up the borehole and froze instantly. Lake Vostok had been completely sealed off from sunlight, the atmosphere, and the rest of the planet for somewhere between 15 and 25 million years. For context, that's before the ancestors of humans and chimpanzees had even split into separate species. When researchers later examined the frozen samples, they found thousands of unidentified genetic sequences, though scientists are still debating how much of it is contamination from drilling fluid and how much might be native to the lake itself. Vostok wasn't the only attempt. In 2013, an American-led project called Wissard drilled into a much shallower subglacial lake called Whillans, using hot water instead of drilling fluid to avoid contaminating the sample. It worked cleanly. The water came back full of living microbes that had never seen sunlight, surviving by metabolizing iron and sulfur compounds ground out of bedrock by the glacier above them. Unlike Vostok, there was no contamination debate here. This was confirmed, unambiguous proof that an entire ecosystem could survive in total darkness, under a kilometer of ice, eating rock instead of food. For scientists who study other worlds, that single result mattered as much as anything found on the surface of Mars. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, and Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, are both believed to hide oceans of liquid water under shells of ice, in conditions strikingly similar to what sits beneath the Antarctic surface. Every subglacial lake drilled on Earth is, in a sense, a rehearsal for a mission that hasn't happened yet. A few hundred kilometers away, in the McMurdo Dry Valleys, there's a much older and stranger version of the same story. Blood falls, a stain of deep red water that bleeds out of the Taylor Glacier and across the ice. For decades, nobody knew why it was red. In 2009, geomicrobiologist Jill McCookie led a team that finally cracked it. The water comes from a pocket of ancient seawater trapped beneath the glacier roughly 1.5 to 2 million years ago, when the valley floor rose and sealed it off from the ocean it came from. Inside that pocket, in complete darkness, with almost no oxygen, researchers found at least 17 different kinds of microbes that had been metabolizing iron and sulfur this entire time. A chemical pathway never observed in nature before. They have never seen sunlight. They have never needed it. So what's actually down there underneath all that ice? Picture it. Mountains nobody has touched. A volcanic field bigger than anything on the surface of the planet, quietly venting heat into a frozen ceiling above it. Canyons deeper than any valley on dry land. Hundreds of lakes, some possibly connected by slow-moving rivers of meltwater, squeezed along the underside of the ice sheet by sheer pressure, carrying nutrients and maybe life between them, and scattered through all of it, isolated pockets of water that haven't touched open air since before humans existed as a species, running their own private experiment in what life can survive without light, without warmth, and without us. It wasn't always like this. Around 53 million years ago, Antarctica wasn't a frozen continent at all. It sat in a warmer position on the globe before plate tectonics pulled it into isolation near the South Pole, and fossil evidence shows it was covered in forest. Pollen and plant fossils recovered from sediment cores point to a green, temperate landscape, more comparable to modern-day New Zealand than to anything we associate with Antarctica today. The ice that now buries an entire hidden world only started forming in earnest around 34 million years ago, and it has been quietly sealing in whatever was left behind ever since. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. The same forces that are letting scientists finally see what's under the ice, melting glaciers, retreating ice shelves, are also erasing the only thing keeping that ancient world sealed shut. Denman Glacier, home to that record-breaking canyon, has already retreated more than 5 kilometers in 20 years, and researchers studying it now suspect warm ocean water is creeping in underneath, eating away at it from below. If it continues, that single glacier alone could raise global sea levels by over a meter. We spent decades imagining Antarctica as the one truly untouched place left on Earth, an empty white page at the bottom of the map, the planet's last boring blank space. It was never empty, and it was never boring. It's one of the most geologically active, biologically strange, and historically deep places on the planet, a buried world of mountains, volcanoes, lakes, and life that has been running its own separate experiment for millions of years without anyone watching. We are only now learning to read it, mapping its trenches, drilling into its lakes, listening for its volcanoes at the exact moment we are starting to melt the cover off the book. Whatever Antarctica is hiding, we may not get an unlimited amount of time to find out.